Chinese fighter jet got too close to U.S. Navy destroyer. Big mistake. Tensions between the United States and China are nothing new. But what happened in the South China Sea recently is the kind of incident that keeps military commanders up at night. A Chinese fighter jet buzzed dangerously close to a U.S. Navy destroyer, and it almost sparked an international disaster. But this wasn't just some random flyby. This was a display of raw power, advanced weaponry, and high-stakes brinkmanship. And trust me, when you hear the details of the weapons involved, the maneuvers performed, and the sheer danger of this encounter, you'll realize how close the world came to another serious military clash. The scene: South China Sea. Hotspot of power. The South China Sea, stretching over 1.3 million square miles, isn't just another body of water. It's one of the most heavily contested maritime zones on the planet, brimming with trade routes, untapped energy reserves, and clashing military ambitions. For decades, Beijing has tried to stake its dominance here through its infamous Nine-Line Claim, which cuts deep into waters also claimed by Vietnam, the Philippines, Malaysia, and others. Meanwhile, the United States Navy insists on keeping these waters open, stressing what it calls freedom of navigation operations. A polite way of saying, we'll sail where we want, when we want. And this isn't some casual disagreement. This is where the world's two most powerful militaries literally stare each other down, just a miscalculation away from disaster. On one of these tense days, the USS Chung-Hoon, DDG-93, entered the picture. Now let's pause for a moment. This isn't some ordinary vessel floating around the ocean. The Chung-Hoon is an Arleigh-Burke-class guided missile destroyer, one of the most battle-tested and lethal classes of warships in modern naval history. At 9,200 tons of steel, it's not just floating, it's projecting raw power across the globe. Packed into its decks is an arsenal that looks like the menu of modern naval warfare. 96 vertical launch system, VLSA cells. Think of these as silos hidden inside the ship, each one capable of firing a different weapon depending on the threat. It can unleash SM-2 and SM-6 surface-to-air missiles to swat enemy aircraft out of the sky, or launch Tomahawk cruise missiles that can travel more than 1,000 miles to strike targets deep inland with pinpoint precision. And if a hostile submarine dares to sneak around, that's where the ASROC anti-submarine rockets come in. A 5-inch or 62 caliber Mark 45 gun. This isn't just some deck decoration. It fires shells at nearly 2,700 feet per second, delivering devastating blows to surface targets and even coastal installations. In the right conditions, this gun can pound targets over 13 miles away. And then, the Phalanx CIWS, close-in weapon system. Picture a robotic R2-D2 with a machine gun, except this one spits out 4,500 rounds per minute. Anything that dares to get too close, drones, missiles, aircraft, gets shredded in seconds. Sailors joke about it being a last-ditch lifesaver, but in reality, it's the difference between life and death in a missile-saturated battle. This is not a cruise ship. This is not a tourist boat snapping sunset pictures. The USS Chung-Hoon is a floating fortress, designed to fight, survive, and dominate in the most hostile corners of Earth's oceans, and the South China Sea. That's about as hostile as it gets. In fact, footage from real-world news reports shows just how tense these waters are. In June 2023, CNN cameras were actually on board the Chung-Hoon when a Chinese warship cut directly across its bow at a distance of only 150 yards. To put that into perspective, that's closer than the length of a football field. For a moment, every sailor on deck froze, knowing that a single wrong move, just one miscalculation, could have triggered an international incident. One U.S. Navy officer, caught on tape during the incident, could be heard muttering, "That's not professional. That's dangerous." And he wasn't wrong. International maritime collision rules, the so-called rules of the road at sea, require ships to keep safe distances. But in this case, China's Navy was flexing hard, trying to intimidate the U.S. destroyer into backing down. But here's the thing. The Chung-Hoon didn't budge. It kept sailing, steady and deliberate. Because that's the point of these patrols. It's not just about being there. It's about showing that no one country owns the ocean. And yet, beneath all this muscle flexing, there's a constant, unspoken question. How close is too close? Because one slip of a radar, One pilot's overreaction, or one commander trying to send a message, could spark a conflict that nobody truly wants. The flyby. A dangerous game. Here's what went down. A Chinese J-16 fighter jet roared toward the U.S. destroyer USS Chung-Hoon. At its closest, the jet screamed past within just 400 feet of the warship. That's so close the sailors on deck could literally see the pilot's visor glinting in the sunlight. For anyone watching from below, it wasn't just an aircraft. It was a warning shot delivered without bullets. Now about the bird itself. The J-16 isn't some knockoff toy buzzing around for thrills. Built by Shenyang Aircraft Corporation. It's a twin-engine, all-weather multi-role jet designed for both air superiority and ground attack. Specs: top speed, max 2.2. That's over 1,600 miles per hour. Combat range: around 1,900 miles with drop tanks. Weapons load: up to 8 tons of firepower. And that loadout isn't for show. A J-16 can carry PL-15 long-range air-to-air missiles, capable of over 200 kilometers strikes, PL-12 medium-range missiles, J-83 anti-ship cruise missiles, designed to sink vessels like the Chung-Hoon, 500 kilograms precision-guided bombs for surgical strikes. Put simply, the J-16 is a flying arsenal. And when a jet like this dives dangerously close to a U.S. destroyer, it's not some look-at-me stunt. It's a statement. Beijing wants to remind Washington that the South China Sea is their backyard, and they're willing to play chicken at supersonic speeds. Of course, U.S. sailors aren't exactly impressed, as one quipped over the radio. "Nice flyby. Too bad your jet's still running on copied blueprints." Because while the J-16 is fast, mean, and heavily armed, to the U.S. Navy it's still just another plane that dared to poke the world's most battle-tested destroyers. And in this high-stakes game of brinkmanship, a single miscalculation could turn a flashy stunt into a fireball over the South China Sea. The weapons standoff. Think about the moment. On one side, a U.S. destroyer with Tomahawks, SM-6 interceptors, and Phalanx CIWS locked on. On the other side, a Chinese J-16 fighter jet with anti-ship missiles capable of sinking ships the size of aircraft carriers. If either side made a mistake, if radar locked too hard, if a trigger finger twitched, we could have seen explosions, fireballs, and international headlines screaming, "U.S. and China clash in South China Sea." And this isn't just speculation. The U.S. Indo-Pacific Command officially released a statement saying the Chinese jet's maneuver was unnecessarily aggressive and could have caused a collision. News outlets like CNN and BBC carried the footage, showing just how close it got. Why the U.S. didn't fire? Here's the big question. With weapons primed and tensions high, why didn't the U.S. Chung-Hoon take action? Because international military encounters follow rules of engagement. U.S. Navy commanders are trained to keep cool, avoid escalation, and only respond when there's an imminent threat. Still, let's not forget, the destroyer's SPY-1D radar was tracking every move of that jet. The crew would have had a firing solution in seconds. If that jet had launched even one missile, the U.S. ship would have replied with overwhelming force. And let's be clear, destroyers like the Chung-Hoon don't sail alone. They're usually part of a carrier strike group, meaning there's probably an aircraft carrier with FA-18 Super Hornets and E-2 Hawkeye surveillance planes somewhere nearby. So if that Chinese jet really wanted to start something, it would have been outnumbered, outgunned, and out of luck real fast. Weapons that could have changed everything. Let's imagine the what if. If the J-16 had fired a J-83 anti-ship missile at the destroyer. That missile flies at Mach 0.9, with a range of 115 miles. Warhead: 400 pounds of high explosive designed to tear through warships. But the U.S. Chung-Hoon has countermeasures. SM-2 and SM-6 missiles could intercept it mid-flight. Phalanx CIWS could shred it at the last second, and electronic warfare systems could jam or mislead the missile's guidance. Now, if the destroyer responded with a Tomahawk missile strike. Range: over 1,000 miles. Speed: 550 miles per hour. Warhead: 1,000 pounds of high explosive or bunker-busting charge. Translation: one Tomahawk could wipe out the airfield that J-16 came from. This is why these encounters are so dangerous. It's not just two machines playing chicken, it's two nuclear powers, each armed to the teeth, daring each other to blink first. The bigger picture: power games. This wasn't just about one jet and one destroyer. It's part of a bigger geopolitical chess match. China wants to show dominance over the South China Sea. It's built artificial islands, armed them with HQ-9 surface-to-air missiles, and stationed H-6 bombers there. The US, meanwhile, wants to prove it won't be intimidated. That's why destroyers like the Chung-Hoon sail right through contested waters under freedom of navigation operations. And every time a jet gets too close, or a ship makes a sharp turn, the world inches a little closer to a flashpoint. So here's the takeaway. A Chinese fighter jet got too close to a US destroyer, and it could have ended very badly. We're talking about a floating fortress packed with missiles, radar, and guns facing off against a supersonic jet loaded with bombs and anti-ship missiles. One wrong move, just one, and the ocean could have lit up with fireballs, debris, and headlines screaming about the start of a new war. And yet, both sides pulled back. Cooler heads prevailed. This time. Funny trash talk segment. Let's be real for a second. What was that Chinese pilot thinking? Flying a jet that close to a US destroyer is like walking up to Mike Tyson, flicking his ear, and hoping he doesn't punch back. Or maybe the pilot thought, yeah, let me just flex my shiny jet in front of this American warship. What's the worst that can happen? Huh? The worst? The Phalanx CIWS turning your $60 million jet into confetti in less than 2 seconds. That's the worst. And sailors on deck. You just know they were muttering, yo, this guy's either the bravest pilot in China or the dumbest. So what do you think? Was that Chinese pilot a fearless ace showing off? Or just one bad decision away from becoming fish food in the Pacific? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'm curious to see how many of you think it was guts versus stupidity. And hey, if you like this breakdown of military close calls, smash that like button, subscribe for more, and ring the bell so you don't miss the next time the world almost blows itself up. Trust me, there's always a next time.